Senator, you and I have had some dialogue already around the whole topic of housing allowance. That's always one of those points that has to be clarified. I think especially as many pastors are filing and applying for the CARES Act. To these churches, that's part of their gross actual dollars, their income, payroll dollars to the pastor. And so if you just submit the 990, I know that that's all included in that. However, I also know in our conversations, that's the one thing that you have specified that is really not to be included into the application or factored into the calculation. Maybe you could speak to that again, just for clarity's sake, as everyone's here on this call.
Well, Craig, I'm going to make this as clear as mud, unfortunately. It's interesting how this works. So from my perspective, one of the things I hope to do is not muddy the water from a social policy perspective. What I did not want, what I do not want, and what I will not support is any of what we call the ornaments on the Christmas tree, where there are policy riders that require churches or the community of faith to respond in a secular way to employment or to any other facet of the church's operations. So I was really hesitant to include anything that was unique and specific to the church, since payroll is payroll, whether you're working for a nonprofit, for a church, or for a business. All three organizations have the same responsibilities for the FICA and the Medicare and for most of the tax withdrawals from a paycheck. So I felt like that would be parity on all organizations. When you get into things that are unique and specific to churches, it becomes hard to then fight against other people who want to bring in negatives to churches. So I pushed against having that included. Now, I will say this, certainly that is not included in the legislation, but it is not specifically prohibited in the legislation either. I say that today because I was having conversations literally this morning with financial institutions. Two said they do not include it because it's not clear that it can be included. The third organization says that they are including it because it's not specifically excluded from the legislation. So what I thought was clear as a bell just a week ago is now clear as mud. So it's still not a part of the legislation, but some institutions, happy to talk with you, Craig, offline, and we can make a determination whether it makes sense to share those institutions that are looking at it differently now. I think it's a tough place to be, frankly. I did not anticipate any institutions seeing what was not in the legislation as the way to include it in the calculations. But obviously, there are some creative institutions that are abiding by the law, but the law does not exclude it. It just doesn't include it.
Yeah.